best conversations for the most pressing issues. This is the Biosphere, and we are #empowering Earth.
Hi everyone, I'm Kit.
And I'm Neil, and we will be your hosts for today's episode.
Welcome to the Biomesphere, a podcast that aims to bring awareness to different environmental issues through insightful conversations and themed episodes.
Today, we'll be talking about our moral responsibility and the abuses faced by animals. We'll be sharing our thoughts on different aspects about the topic and what we hope to see more of in the future.
Animal Ethicality.
Let us introduce our guest student speakers for today. The first guest is a person that is dedicated to change making. She is the assistant head of creatives at Biomes MNL. She is also part of other organizations that aim to give the youth a platform to speak up about issues that are not always seen in the media. Please welcome Maya Baritugo.
Hi everyone, I'm happy to be here again.
Next, we have someone who is part of the creative team for Biomes. Moreover, she loves the idea of using communication and social media to spark change. She also loves being creative either through art, speech, or videography. So it's great to have her here to combine creativity with change. Please welcome Abby Opinia.
Hi y'all, hi Catapults of Change.
Hi Abby. Now, next, we have a 17-year-old STEM student and a journalist at Biomes MNL. During her free time, she likes reading books and also engages in sports like volleyball and tennis. Please welcome Layson Bat.
Hi everyone, it's so nice to be here today.
Thank you so much everyone. It's so nice hearing your voices yet again here at the Biosphere. Today, during this episode, we will be covering animal abuse and cruelty, rural areas, the beauty industry, and plus also an additional topic, #SaveRalphAwareness. So now that I've shared with you what our topics will be for today, does anyone want to say a few things about anything that you've heard so far?
So I'd like to talk about how animals have been treated in the Philippines over the decades. Growing up, most of us knew that animal life in the Philippines was diverse. I personally grew up hearing things about like the Philippine eagle or even tarsiers in Bohol. It was always talked about in my classes. But as I grew older, I slowly realized that there's not much people making an effort to protect these animals. Although some parts of the Philippines remain forested, our country's forests have been shrinking rapidly for decades, and I think that definitely affects animal life. So in terms of like the treatments of animals, I definitely think that more effort could be put in to preserve biodiversity in our country.
That's true, 100% agree with that. And the alarming part is we can see it everywhere around us. We don't need to go to like a place that we haven't been to before just to see animal abuse happen. It's so common that if you just go out of your house and look at the street, you can see all of the stray animals with like wound marks, animals not being taken care of. So thank you so much for bringing that up. And that goes into our very first main topic, animal abuse and cruelty. This abuse can range for a lot of things, but it's mostly from the illegal selling of pets, specifically ones that might have been stolen. This is more common in the northern areas of the Philippines where there's a lack of safety awareness towards pets, perhaps because maybe animals are not treated as living things with feelings. Maybe it's just because it's cute, maybe it's because they want a companion. Does anyone want to share an experience with animal cruelty?
I think it's pretty common in like Manila, where you know how they color like the birds or like the chicks and then they sell it because it looks cute. And I think we prioritize like being cute and everything, but we don't really see it in the perspective of the animal and empathize with the animal. So.
Yeah, so animal cruelty, I think, like, I don't really have a direct experience of animal cruelty, but I see it in our society because animal cruelty being projected as a form of entertainment and kind of making it seem beautiful is actually still in itself animal cruelty. Like, this can be applied to marine animals that we can see at marine parks or stuff like that, with some even being forced to perform until they die. Instead, like, what we can do with the technology right now, we can just make virtual reality aquariums and stuff like that.
Agreed. Very true on both of those statements. For the whole animal trade business, it seems as if we look at animals as performers rather than companions to love and take care of. And because people are so blinded by the pretty colors of this animal, or seeing an exotic animal at a place where they're not supposed to be is so enticing to them, it just ends up harming the animals. So I think that we should be able to do something about this. Does anyone know what we could be able to do, both in the sense of this pandemic and when we're done with this pandemic already?
In terms of like animal cruelty as means of entertainment, I think educating people is a good solution for this. Because maybe they don't know the long-term effects of their actions, and so that's probably why they do it. In my opinion, I think if we educate people and take action towards what they're doing, animal cruelty could be lessened as means of entertainment.
I hope that they would include it in our education. You're right about that. But another big concern is that most of these illegal sellings don't come from cities or places that have education. They're from rural areas, which will be our topic later on. Rural areas where they have no choice, they can't go to school at all. What would you propose as a solution for locations like that?
I think we undervalue the lives of these animals, and I think the government undervalues the lives of these animals and nature itself. So I think pushing them to give more support and give more value to these animals are very important, because we do have laws and we do have systems in place, but they just don't support it. We don't have proper communication, don't have proper facilities for these animals. And therefore, it's hard to report or to keep people accountable for abusing animals.
Exactly. I even read somewhere that for up to 7 years, it's punishable in jail, or they can be fined an average of 5,000 pesos. We have all of these rules, but no one seems to be enforcing it. So, how can we make sure that maybe the government or people enforce these rules that are already set in place?
I think what we can do is to basically not support animal cruelty. We have been supporting animal cruelty in ways that we didn't know we did. And actually, animal cruelty, we can't just find this in rural areas. Actually, it's also seen in urban areas. Like, if you see an elephant in circuses or whatsoever, that's cruelty right there. Because in a sense, you're not granting the animal liberty to be in its natural habitat, right? And captivity, I believe, is only positive when it's captive breeding. So I think we should really strengthen the implementation of laws like RA 9147 so that we can actually protect the biological diversity of the country.
I have nothing to say to that. You basically summed up like everything that we wanted to say about this topic. You're right about that. It's both prevalent in both urban areas, rural areas. It's just masqueraded as something more enjoyable in urban areas. When we think about a circus, we don't immediately think about animal cruelty. We think about, wow, this is so fun, as opposed to rural areas where it might be more bloody. Speaking of rural areas, Neil, would you like to talk more about this topic?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the discussions that we have had have tackled rural areas and how they have treated animals. And these areas regularly welcome animal cruelty, usually for purposes of entertainment. And this is not only in the Philippines, rather the entirety of Southeast Asia. This is very common with practices such as rooster fights, dog fights, and sometimes even they put horses in a stable and make them fight. So that's really haunting to me. What do you guys think about that?
I think that the problem with this is like a lack of empathy, and like Maya said a while ago, it's the lack of education. I think if we can enlighten these people and show them what they're doing and how they're affecting the animal, but also how they're affecting themselves, because we are living in an ecosystem where we affect nature and we affect animals, and it will also come back to us and affect us. So if we show them the effects and the cycle of this, maybe they could enlighten themselves and stop doing these things.
That's quite true because like education is one of the factors that not a lot of people think about when it comes to animal cruelty, because it's so widespread around the world, and it's important to think about how we treat these animals, and that's not really taught much anywhere for that matter. So that's a really good insight.
I totally agree with Abby. I'd also like to add on because a while ago she said like we could implement laws better. I want to use this opportunity to remind our listeners to vote wisely on the 2022 elections. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great insight as well. You know, like a lot of the times, change in general depends on how the country perceives a certain issue, and animal cruelty is such a vast issue, and it includes so many things such as education, such as economic ability of people, and there's just so much to it that sometimes it gets very unnoticed, and that's why some communities fall into this, you know, rapid cycle of animal abuse. So I think a question that like in general stems from this entire discussion is that, do you guys think that these areas have the economic capability to sustain themselves without the use of like animal entertainment, or like having these animals for dinner? Do you guys think that they have this economic sustainability within their communities?
Yeah, I think that, like we said a while ago about educating, I didn't just mean like educating as in schools, because as we said, rural areas have a hard time with the education system, but also training people in their livelihoods, to teach them a better way of doing their livelihoods, and like giving them jobs that don't affect animals or treat animals badly. And this cycle will just benefit them in the long run, because if they treat the animals properly, they're going to benefit from that sooner or later, and they're going to get a more sustainable and economically efficient lifestyle.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a very important factor that, you know, education is not only like provided in schools, but rather governments can, you know, go out there and educate the citizens about their lifestyles and how they would want to work with the communities that are being not so economically benefited by the government system in the area. And that's a very insightful thing to think about. And I think a lot of people will benefit, or our viewers will also benefit by listening to you. Thank you so much. There are a few things that have been going around online as per one of the most renowned economic things in the Philippines, that being sari-sari stores. Like all of us, I think, have been to sari-sari stores to buy probably toothpaste or like bread and stuff. And there have been a few rumors circulating around the internet that people in sari-sari stores sometimes will label a few items as chicken meat, but they're not necessarily meat coming from chicken, and they have identified a few species of dogs and roosters being part of that mix. So what do you guys think about that?
Wait, OMG, really? That's so sad.
Do they really? They eat
I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah, me too. That's so sad.
learning.
Considering all the things that have been happening in the pandemic, people are losing money almost every day because people are losing so many jobs. Do you think that this is a sustainable way of sourcing meat?
Obviously it's not a good practice, and I think we should really urge the government to kind of ban these forms of activities, because even if you think of it like as something as like, you know, kind of like for sustainability and trying to get rid of like other meats and stuff and using dog meat instead, that's very concerning. So I think we should really urge the government to ban that kind of thing and really put action towards it.
So I was wondering about this. What makes a dog different from a chicken? If they're both animals, what makes killing a dog not okay compared to killing a chicken? So it's just like a genuine question that I've been wondering myself as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's very wrong because dogs are domesticated animals and they're not meant to be eaten. Whereas chickens, like if you go back to ancient times or whatever kind of time you call it, they have been made to kind of be eaten. But dogs are, I mean, in a sense, they're edible, but it's just wrong to eat them because we keep them as companions and they're very domesticated and they're not made for that purpose.
I see. So, how about for areas where I guess maybe they really can't afford chicken or beef or any other like usual forms of meat? What can they resort to instead of killing domesticated animals?
I think a way in which I can answer that is they could be vegetarians, like resorting to like plant-based stuff. Like instead of eating dogs, I feel like that's much better. But for people who really cannot, I don't really know how to answer that because I myself I have 2 dogs, so I don't want to say it's okay to eat dogs.
Thank you so much for answering that very difficult question.
Yeah, it's really a moral kind of question. Is dog meat the same as chicken meat? It's really something to ponder about. But I think in the vast majority of things, most of the times people would get these dogs to butcher like from the streets, like stray dogs. And the roosters, on the other hand, that they would, or the chickens that they would be, getting for butchering, those would really be chickens that are cared for, and sometimes they're free range, sometimes they're, but most of the times I think one of the main reasons that people would avoid like meat other than chicken meat is that other types of meat are not really cultivated for or not really cared for, in a sense that, let's say you have a stray dog and you butcher it for its meat, you don't know what kind of diseases it might be carrying, or you don't know what kind of viruses it might be carrying, even though they might not be carrying any viruses or diseases. It's just always like a thing at the back of the mind for a lot of people, and I think that's also where some of the stigma comes in. But yeah, it's really great how they was able to tackle, a more emotional side of things. Why would you want to kill a domesticated animal when you already have meat coming from a more sustainable market with chickens in that sense? So that's a really, really great question to ponder upon. I think now the main portion of like animal abuses in rural areas is so widely seen that it's also very important to think, what about aside from rural areas, or what about aside from animal cruelty with these fights and like butchering of these animals? I think one of the main areas that this is seen is the beauty industry. So Kit, do you want to help us out?
Of course, sure. So, the beauty industry is a very interesting topic here in the Philippines because, from what I've noticed, a lot of our local products, actually, I think almost all of them, are cruelty free. So, that's something positive to note about in the Philippines. So, how about the other people here? Have you had any experiences where you can see animal cruelty in the beauty industry?
I think that's something very interesting because the thing about the beauty industry is that you don't really see it. It's more of you use the product, but behind the product you have so much cruelty, and it's so easy to just ignore because it's not in your face, and that's the whole point. And that's what we're trying to fight for, because it's so easy to ignore something that isn't in your face or that isn't a part of your life. But it doesn't mean that it isn't part of your life we shouldn't care for it.
100% same with that. Yeah. But that's where it becomes hard, right? Because the line is so blurred. From the examples earlier, we can kind of see it with our own 2 eyes, but in the beauty industry, we can just turn a blind eye to it because we can't really see it in the products. How can we be more aware of animal cruelty being used in this way?
So actually, I only heard like about the animal cruelty thing in the beauty industry when I heard about the Save Ralph movement, and I don't know. It's like I only found out about that idea when it was like on the media already. But to like make sure that you're not supporting brands that do support animal cruelty, just look for the cruelty-free label on your products, and you can also buy your products from local businesses that are cruelty-free. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I also didn't know about the Save Ralph movement until today, actually. So I think that I should. It's a short film, right?
It's very moving.
Actually, I think Biomes MNL posted about it on their feed. So if you would like to learn more about the Save Ralph movement, check their post out.
Love that. That's super great to hear. Okay, moving forward with this topic, what if there's this brand that I really want to use? Let's say I'm a beauty influencer and I really want to use it. I want to review this product because everyone is raving about it. It's on trend, it's affordable. What will I do if it doesn't have the cruelty-free label? Should I still use it, or what can I do?
So, if you see that it's really like on trend, I'm pretty sure that there's local businesses that make like something that could make something identical to that, or like a business that's cruelty free. So as much as possible, find an alternative for it, or just you don't always have to follow the trends. If honestly, like if it's not good for, or if it's not benefiting anyone except you. And also, I don't think it's purely the consumer's fault. We also have to demand accountability for the companies that do support animal cruelty. So yeah.
I see. So, as like for example, the situation where I'm a beauty vlogger, instead of following the trend, I should instead set an example for everyone so that we can take down these companies that are doing animal cruelty. That's a very nice way to go about it. Thank you so much for that answer. Now, speaking of influencers are very important because they raise awareness on things around us, whether it be in a good way or a bad way.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the times we think about animal cruelty as something that, again, includes all factors as discussed before, and something that a lot of people also fight for is the awareness on this issue. So are there any areas of improvement for probably the government or us individuals on how we can raise awareness on the animal cruelty in the Philippines?
I think we should generate more causes directed towards this issue. And I feel like the main thing, like I said a while ago, is to just not support it in general and to spread the word. Because if we're not supporting it and we're not talking about it, then what's the point? Because if we really don't like kind of put it out there for the world to hear and for people to actually imbibe from, we really cannot do anything about it. Even if we don't do things based on a global scale, at least it's not like we're not doing anything. So I think it's very important to urge individuals and consumers to be ethical and sustainable in their purchases.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to what Lei said, because I completely agree with having like consumers and knowing what you buy and being individually responsible. But at the same time, I think we should also focus our attention and our awareness to the companies themselves and to make sure that they are held accountable for making these products. Because we can make we can spread it as much as we want, but there's still somebody that's going to buy that and an animal is still going to get hurt. And I think if we focus on pushing these companies and putting the spotlight on them to stop making these products, then I think that's also going to be very beneficial. So it has to be both consumers and producers.
Yeah, I think that's a really great insight. It's not only dependent on like one area of the entire situation, but rather there's both the consumers, there's both the businesses that seek opportunities in this issue, and also the general lifestyle of the public. I think that's also a very big thing to consider. So I think one more like I guess a general thing in the Philippines, a general rule. The Philippine Animal Welfare Society, or PAWS, has been quite heavily advocating for the halt of animal abuse. And they have had hotlines for any contacts of animal abuse. So, do you guys think that the Philippines is in the right direction on this issue with that hotline of reporting and stuff? Or do you guys think we can do much more? And what do you guys think about that?
I definitely think that it's a good start already. I think we can do more. Yeah, as like we spoke about it earlier about like implementing laws more and stuff like that. Yeah, that's basically all I have to say.
Yeah, I agree with Maya. It's a very good start, but I think like in the end we should also always give funding to scientific studies and kind of work on captive breeding so that we can increase populations of species that are already going extinct and therefore kind of reintroduce them to their natural habitats. But all in all, PAWS is doing a good job at raising awareness about their advocacy.
I think those are really great insights from all of you guys, because from what I know, PAWS has been able to do a much better job than the government in cracking down these areas of or filled with animal cruelty, and they have been able to prevent it in a lot of regions, specifically for the vegan region and the Baguio region, Baguio areas, like in the Philippines, which have been quite beneficial for all of those communities there. And the government have also been able to provide a bit more like education in those regions. So I think that would be great to see if that can happen in all regions around the Philippines. So yeah, I think we're still on the right track, but we're not there, if that makes sense. So Kit, do you want to give us a bit more perspective about, just having and supporting these domesticated animals that are being abused, specifically like adoption and stuff like that?
Yes, I would love to. Actually, I volunteered for just a little bit. Like I tried to volunteer in PAWS before the pandemic hit. But then, yeah, unfortunately, PAWS is actually very far from our location right now, so I couldn't go there regularly. But I was able to attend their seminars and meet the animals there. And these animals are in such bad conditions, but with PAWS and other organizations that help out animals, these adoption centers, they nurse the animals back to life. So for example, if an animal comes in with a broken leg, they will fix the leg. They have veterinarians there, and they will also train the animals to be, in a way, more loving, I guess, to humans. But it's not really their fault, because if they've been abused their whole life, of course they're not gonna want to be with humans. That's why they get this reputation of being scary, angry, but in fact, they're not really supposed to do that. They're just being defensive. So they also go through psychological therapy for this. And then when the time comes, hopefully they get adopted by a loving family, and completely they're gonna forget about all the bad things that they went through when they were out on the streets. So I just want to advocate more on adopting animals instead of buying them from breeders, because most of the time these breeders don't practice good and ethical measures for breeding, because these places are just there to make money. So they mass breed the animals. I don't know if you've seen it, but they're in cages that look like apartment or like jail cells, and they're all in a row. They're all stuck together and they don't look happy at all. And I know that we want to buy them out of this just to save them, but it's actually worse for them because we're supporting this kind of industry. So please, please, please try to adopt if you can. And yeah, I think I said a lot about the topic because I'm really passionate about it. But if anyone else wants to share as well, please feel free to go ahead.
Yes, I completely agree. And personally, I have an adopted cat. The mother died on our garage, and we decided to adopt the babies. And Yeah, and I think that, it's a stray cat and it literally looks like every other cat, but to me it's like the cutest thing ever. And I think
Same.
people love the breeded dogs or the breeded cats, but literally if you take care of the cat, it's going to be the cutest thing in the world. It's like saying, how can your child be ugly? Like, so it's very important to, like, pets are everywhere. Sometimes you just ignore them because you want this type of dog or this type of cat, but literally if you just adopt them and you love them, it's gonna be so worth it. And yeah, it's my child.
That's so
It's so
cute.
Thank you for that very cute story. Actually, I had the same experience. Well, I didn't see anyone die, thankfully, but there was just a stray cat and it just followed me home. And I was like, oh, you're following me. Okay, why don't I just take you in? And then I still miss that cat to this day. Like, every day I think about my cat. Shout out to Zumi, wherever you are. I had to leave my cat behind with a neighbor, which I feel okay with because the neighbor is taking care of a lot of cats. So I'm sure that my cat is fine. But this just goes to show that in order to love an animal, to have a companionship with an animal, they don't need to be a fancy breed. It's not in the looks, like what they say, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, not the breed of the animal. So yeah. Does anyone else want to
I
share a
love that
story?
saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, not in the breed of the animal.
I just made up
Amazing.
that. Don't quote me on that. That's made up on the spot.
Yeah, it just goes to show, like, we could help in our own ways. Like, you don't have to be like in an organization or anything big, but you could do it like in the opportunity of the moment, like around your house. Or for me, it was my garage. And yeah, so it's everybody really has the opportunity to help.
Yes, exactly. So this goes on to a question that I've been thinking about, which is what if you yourself want to help, but your family members couldn't care less? How can we influence other people, whether it be family or friends, to also try to adopt and to not support animal cruelty?
Okay, so I think I can answer this question because for people who don't know, my family has 10 members. And so it's been like really hard for me to convince them to switch to a more sustainable lifestyle. But for me, it was just constant like nagging and telling them like what we can do better and like what doing that affects other people. And so yeah, that's like really just what I did personally to convince them to switch to a more sustainable lifestyle and a more environmentally friendly lifestyle.
So you socially conditioned them. Like you kept nagging them so much that they were like, all right, fine.
Yes, especially my mom. She was like, "Oh my God, are you sure you really want to do that?" And I was like, "Yes, we have to."
That's really cute. I love that your family relationship is like that and that they eventually listen to you. Does anyone else have any other experiences on this?
I think one of the main things that a lot of families struggle with is that, the stigma around, oh, if we're gonna adopt pets, they might not like be okay, like quote unquote
Yeah.
okay, like they might have like diseases, they might be carrying stuff like ticks and stuff. Yeah, and I think that's a really big stigma around it. But then let's say Paws, for example, is supporting adopting animals. I think they will try their best to make sure that they either vaccinate the pet or they make sure that they are able to sustain their life at least in good conditions, because if an animal does not receive the proper treatment, it is probably not going to be able to help itself, because animals usually can't speak, although we learned in a lot of other Disney movies that they can, and it's so sad that they can't. And that is why these organizations try to help out a lot, and I think it's really great for people to understand that connection when it comes to like stray animals or just animals you see off of the street that look like they are in need of help and stuff. I think a very general idea would be that ask them, like, what if you were in that situation? Would you not want somebody to help you, like even just for a day, at least you can give them a bit of food or water and just help them out and transport them to an adoption agency like Paws and other kinds of organizations. And I hope that's something that inspires families around the world. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Neil. Well said, and I guess that wrapped up our last topic for today.
I think the moral lesson here is to just basically adopt, don't shop. So yeah.
And for me, I'm just happy I got to plug my cat.
Same
Yeah.
here.
Convince your family to be more sustainable and to adopt like little pets there. Like they're not necessarily going to be aggressive if you give them a foster home and just kind of give them the love that they need.
Exactly. And a last thing to add to that is also don't adopt or shop for a pet if you know that you are not ready for it. Because if you just abandon the pet out of nowhere, that's going to be so heartbreaking. So make sure you talk it out with your family members first and make sure that everyone is up to the responsibility and no one has any aggressive tendencies towards animals.
Yes, make sure no one's allergic.
Yeah. Okay, and now to end the podcast, in short, do we take to the streets to protest against every person who has records of animal cruelty? Of course not.
But do we raise awareness and try our best to contribute by helping organizations?
Or, just like what Abby said, we can do it in our own small ways when the opportunity arises.
Yes.
Now, it is about amplifying the current efforts and inspiring more people to become catapults for change.
Thank you so much, everyone, and we hope to see you next time.
The Biosphere is presented to you by Biomes Manila. We would like to extend our thanks to the hosts, speakers, and music creators for making this venture possible. Ready to dive in and make a change? Follow us on Instagram at biomes.mnl and Facebook at Biomes Manila. Stay updated on our social media platforms for more information regarding our podcast and future events just like this. Biomes Manila, using biomes as a catapult for change since 2020.